Hello, it's Bryony Rust here, speech and language therapist at Salt by the Sea, and today I thought we would start with a little game. Can you guess from these objects what I spent my morning doing? So there are lots of familiar objects and you might be able to get some clues from it. So this morning I drank some coffee, I took the dog for a walk, I read a book, and I also went for a very short swim in the sea. So really what we're doing here is using objects as clues to represent different activities. And so we might say this is kind of like an informal use of objects of reference. And today I want to share with you how you can use objects of reference as a way to help your child feel more secure and confident in understanding everyday routines, and also to express their own preferences and requests at the same time. So if your child is just learning to communicate and you want to give them more options to tell you what they're interested in, and also to support with those points of transition to help them feel more comfortable and settled as you move through your daily routines, then keep watching, because objects of reference is a really useful tool that you can use to back up spoken language and help pin down the kind of abstract world of spoken language. So today we're going to look at objects of reference. This is a way of almost kind of formalizing the natural visual clues that we all pick up within a situation. We're all picking up what we can see around us as a way to back up what is said to us. And that is particularly the case for young children as they are still figuring out lots of the intricacies of spoken language. So I often describe young children as being really good detectives, because it might appear that they're understanding everything that's said to them, even though they're not talking very much yet. And that is because they're busy figuring out the clues of the situation. Children are noticing what you're doing with your hands, where you're pointing, your facial expressions, whereabouts you are, and also the objects that you're holding in your hands. And objects of reference is a way for us to be much more consistent and intentional in using objects to give a child visual clues about a specific activity, person, or place. Us speech and language therapists are often recommending using as many visual clues to back up spoken language as possible. This helps your child to understand more of what you're saying, and also they can start using those visual clues themselves. Often we think about using pictures and photos as a useful visual backup tool for your child, and objects is a really useful starting point, particularly if your child isn't yet particularly interested in looking at pictures or symbols. Objects are that thing that you probably already have in your hand anyway, and they're a really practical way to get started in making sure that you are giving your child a clear visual clue about what's happening next. So when I'm sharing this with families, I will often suggest that you pick the activities that you regularly do within your day, and then plan for and choose a specific object that you're going to use to give your child that clue. So you might want to grab a pen and paper and jot down those specific routine activities that your child does most days, and that you're often telling them, okay, it's time for us to go to the shop, it's time for us to go and play out in the garden, let's go to the park, it's time for bath time, it's bedtime, etc. And think about what specific consistent object could you use for each of those activities, and maybe start with just 3 so you can kind of get into the habit. So ones that parents often share with me that they start with is bath time, going out into the garden, and getting ready for nursery or preschool. Maybe there is a particular toy that your child enjoys, and when it's a question of going out in the car to the shop, maybe it's your car keys, or maybe it's even your child's shoes, putting those on as a visual clue that you're getting ready to go outside. You can also use objects of reference to represent a specific person. Say you're going to go and visit grandma, maybe she is always wearing a colourful scarf or something, then maybe that can be your object that you use to show your child, we're going to go see grandma now. When we start using objects of reference, it's really a way for you to have that extra visual to back up what you're telling a child is happening next. But then over time, as you're building up this kind of library of objects of reference that your child can understand symbolize a specific activity or place, then our hope is that the child can also use those to make a request. So say they want to go out into the garden, they might be able to find that particular object and give it to you. Hey, Mom, let's go and play out in the garden. The trick to making objects of reference really powerful and effective is consistency. So choosing those specific objects that you're going to use every time to symbolize that activity, and using them every time when you talk about that activity, so that your child starts making that really strong link between what you're saying, what you're showing them, and then what they go off and do or see. As with so many tools and strategies when it comes to supporting speech, language, and communication, there's often lots of intricacies to it. But when we start worrying about all the details of that, it often stops us from taking action. So I would invite you to take imperfect action today. Jot down some of those everyday routines, those objects that you have to hand that you can use intentionally every time to represent those activities, and get started, because every one of those tiny imperfect steps that you take to support your child is a step in the right direction. I'd love to hear how you get on. What are those objects that you're going to have to hand? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next time.